What if the idea that your life is already written is not completely true? What if blaming destiny is quietly stopping you from changing your future? And what if the real dark side of Kali is not the world around you, but the way we understand it? In many traditions, especially in Hindu thought, Kali Yuga is described as a time of confusion, stress, and moral decline. This is a fact found in texts like the Puranas and the Mahabharata, where time is divided into cycles. But there is also a common belief that grows around this idea. Many people think that because we are in Kali Yuga, human effort no longer matters and everything is controlled by fate. This is where things become unclear. Because if we look closely at texts like the Bhagavad Gita, we see a different message. Action, or karma, is still central to life. It teaches that while we cannot control every result, we are still responsible for our actions. In today's world, this confusion shows up in very real ways. Some people stop trying after failure, thinking, "This is my destiny." Others stay in painful situations because they believe they have no control. Psychology also studies similar patterns. For example, the concept of learned helplessness, introduced by researcher Martin Seligman, shows how people can start believing they have no power even when they actually do. This is not a spiritual teaching. It is a human reaction to repeated difficulty. So this story is not about rejecting tradition or denying hard truths. It is about understanding them more clearly. Some ideas about destiny are still debated, and not every answer is certain. But by looking at both ancient teachings and modern knowledge, we can start asking better questions. If you want to explore this deeply, stay with this video until the end. And if you find value in honest, thoughtful content like this, consider liking and subscribing to support the channel. Many people grow up hearing a simple idea. Your life is already written, and no matter what you do, the result will not change. This belief can feel comforting, especially during failure or pain, because it removes pressure. But when we look closely at traditional sources, the picture is more balanced. In Hindu philosophy, texts like the Bhagavad Gita explain karma as action and consequence, not as fixed fate. This is a verifiable idea found in the text, where it teaches that a person has control over actions, even if results are not always in their hands. At the same time, other texts describe Kali Yuga as a time when truth is harder to follow and confusion increases. This is also a fact found in sources like the Puranas. However, the belief that humans lose all control in this age is an interpretation, not a direct statement from these texts. This difference between what is written and how it is understood creates a problem. When people hear that times are bad and destiny is fixed, they may stop trying. For example, think of a student who fails an exam more than once. Instead of asking what can be improved, the student may say, "This is my destiny," and give up. This kind of thinking is not just a cultural issue, it is also studied in psychology. Research by Martin Seligman on learned helplessness shows that when people face repeated failure, they can begin to believe they have no control, even when change is still possible. This is a well-known and tested concept in behavioral science. So the dark side here is not the idea of destiny itself, but how it is misunderstood. When destiny is seen as something fixed and unchangeable, it can quietly reduce effort and responsibility. But if we go back to the original teachings, the message is more balanced. Life may include limits based on time, place, and situation, but human action still plays a role. Modern research supports this view as well, showing that effort, habits, and decisions can shape outcomes over time. This does not mean every effort leads to success, and it is important to be honest about that. But it does mean that doing nothing guarantees no change at all. In daily life, the belief in destiny often shows up in quiet and simple ways, and many people may not even notice it. A worker may stay in the same job for years, thinking that better opportunities are only for lucky people. A person may remain in an unhealthy relationship, believing that this is what life has given them, and nothing can be changed. These are not rare situations. They are common across different cultures and backgrounds. It is important to be clear here. Difficult life conditions are real, and not everyone has the same opportunities. That is a fact supported by social and economic research. But the belief that nothing can be changed at all is not always accurate. It is often a conclusion people reach after facing repeated problems. This kind of thinking can slowly affect emotional health. When people feel that they have no control over their lives, they often lose motivation and hope. Studies in psychology support this idea. The concept of locus of control, introduced by Julian Rotter, explains how people who believe they have some control over their actions and decisions tend to cope better with stress. On the other hand, those who believe everything is controlled by outside forces, like fate or luck, may feel more anxiety and helplessness. This does not mean belief in destiny is wrong, but it shows how extreme belief can affect the mind. Another important effect is the loss of responsibility. When everything is explained as destiny, it becomes easy to avoid learning from mistakes. For example, if someone fails in a task and immediately says, "It was meant to happen," they may miss the chance to improve skills or change habits. Ethical teachings, including those found in Hindu philosophy, usually stress responsibility along with acceptance. Karma is not only about what happens to a person, but also about how a person acts. There are also real examples of change when thinking shifts. Consider a factory worker who believed for years that growth was not possible. After learning a simple new skill, such as basic machine repair or communication, small opportunities began to appear. This does not mean life became perfect or easy, but it shows a clear point. Effort can open doors, even if slowly. Research in behavioral science supports this, showing that small changes in habits and skills can lead to gradual improvement over time. A more balanced way to understand destiny begins with a simple idea. Some parts of life are given, but many parts are shaped by what we do next. For example, no one chooses where they are born, their early environment, or certain unexpected events. These are real limits, and it is important to be honest about them. But within those limits, people still make choices every day. This view is not new. In the Bhagavad Gita, a key teaching is that a person has control over actions, even if results are not fully in their control. This is a verifiable idea in the text, and it suggests responsibility, not helplessness. Some scholars interpret this teaching in slightly different ways, so it is fair to say that there is some debate, but the general message supports effort and duty. When we bring this idea into daily life, it becomes practical. Instead of thinking about big sudden changes, research in behavioral science shows that small repeated actions are more reliable. Studies on habit formation, such as those discussed in academic psychology and modern summaries like James Clear's work, explain that small actions done daily can shape long-term outcomes. For example, learning one small skill each week, improving communication, or managing time better may not seem powerful in one day, but over months, the effect becomes clear. This does not mean success is guaranteed, and it is important to say that openly. Life includes uncertainty, and effort does not always lead to the exact result we want. But without effort, the chances of change become very low. Another useful idea is the difference between acceptance and control. Some situations cannot be changed immediately, such as a sudden loss or a difficult environment. Accepting this reality can reduce stress, and this is supported by many psychological approaches, including acceptance-based therapies. But acceptance does not mean giving up. It means focusing energy on what can still be done. For example, a person facing financial difficulty may not solve everything at once, but they can start with small steps, like tracking expenses or learning basic skills. Over time, these steps can create stability. So the dark side is not destiny itself, but the belief that action has no value. A more honest view is this: destiny may set the starting point, but daily actions help shape the path forward. When we look back at everything in this story, one clear idea begins to stand out. The dark side of Kali is not simply about living in a difficult time, because difficult times have existed in many periods of history. The deeper issue is how people understand those difficulties. When the idea of destiny is taken to mean that nothing can be changed, it can quietly reduce effort, hope, and responsibility. This is not a direct teaching found in major texts, but rather a common interpretation that has grown over time. At the same time, traditional sources like the Bhagavad Gita continue to place importance on action, duty, and personal effort, even when results are uncertain. This is a point that can be verified by reading the text itself. Modern knowledge also supports a balanced view. Research in psychology shows that people who believe they have some control over their actions often cope better with stress and are more likely to take positive steps. Concepts like locus of control and learned helplessness help explain why belief in complete lack of control can harm both thinking and behavior. These are well-studied ideas, but like all research, they are part of an ongoing effort to understand human behavior, and not every situation is the same. So, a more honest way to see life is this: some parts of life are outside our control, and it is important to accept that without denial. But at the same time, daily actions, habits, and decisions still matter. They may not change everything, and they may not work quickly, but they can create direction over time. This is not about denying destiny or rejecting tradition. It is about understanding both limits and possibilities in a clear and balanced way.